symposium. I think what I'm going to talk about briefly connects very well to what we just heard in the first series of talks. And it relates actually to a research that I've been doing in Colombia with the Inca people, the indigenous Inca people of Colombia. And that started with a shared research trip with Felipe Castelblanco in the territories. And so the art project that I'm showing here in the exhibition, Forest Mind, emerged from this long-term collaboration with the Inga, who wanted to create an indigenous university in their territory. Let me get to the first slide here. So I was on an extended field trip to the south of Colombia when Hernando Chindoy, who was then leader of the Inga people, invited me to participate in the creation of this indigenous university in their territory. It's a region that has been cut off by the armed conflict for many decades, so they've been very isolated and interested in getting in contact with international partners and so on. So for a number of years, I have collaborated in this project in various functions by co-writing the concept, organizing field workshops, forging partnerships with international university, and by generating an audiovisual and intellectual memory of this unique process of creating the university, and also to record kind of their territorial memory. I saw this as an opportunity to learn more about the indigenous thought, cosmology, and way of life, and to take part in a project that wasn't primarily about image making, but rooted in forest epistemologies and the politics of knowledge in a post-conflict context. I call this artistic input to the project Devenir Universidad, becoming university. And what is becoming university is not so much the people, the Inga people, but the territory itself. Devenir Universidad is a multi-species research with different human and other than human participants thinking and acting together with the territory. The Inga think of this future institution as a biocultural university. Biodiversity and epistemic diversity have co-evolved over millennia. They are completely entangled, so much so that if one of them dies, the other one also disappears. In other words, to safeguard the ancestral knowledge of the forest is critical for the survival of the forest. Indigenous knowledge has not been appreciated by the university-style universities in the Andean centers. So the Inga see it as crucial to take the politics of education into their hands. The collaboration gave me the chance to bring into conversation the different knowledge systems, the modern scientific and the shamanic.
Aquí no puede vivir como doctor o abogado, aquí puede vivir con conocimiento empírico, ¿cierto? Pero ese conocimiento empírico no es reconocido dentro de las escalas del sistema de las ciencias. Entonces, ahí ya hay un desequilibrio a nivel de reconocimiento y de justicia, con la norma, con la realidad. Entonces, ahí es donde empezamos a hablar sobre sujeto-objeto. Los empíricos son los objetos, ¿cierto? No son sujetos, no son reconocidos como sujetos, son los objetos. Entonces, ahí tampoco hay justicia. Y los abuelos siempre han dicho, el reconocimiento de nosotros como realmente expertos, porque son los expertos. Uno dice, ¿quién se inventó químicamente dos plantas que el chagropanga y el yagé estuvieran juntos ¿cierto? Para que la combinación de estas dos pudiera usted volar a otro mundo o trasladarse a otro mundo. ¿Quién investigó más al bosque que un biólogo? Un anciano. Esa es la dinámica de la justicia, de entender este conocimiento en un marco, en un plano, digamos, de las ciencias. Yo digo de las ciencias.
Indigenous people in the Amazon view knowledge as embedded in the environment. Territory is a cognitive and sentient entity that emerges from the ecological and social relationships between all beings who inhabit the space. From the Inga perspective, knowing is not about analyzing objectively from a distance, as in Western science. Knowing something means to become part of a field of meaningful relations with all species and with the social and historical relations connected to that space. This complex field of ecological relations is what indigenous people in the Amazon call territory. It is intimately connected to knowledge, wisdom, perceiving, and caring, and this attitude generates a peaceful and respectful relationship to the living world. By recognizing their intelligence, they turn all biological beings into subjects. They encounter the other as person, as mind. In this broader context of co-creating the Indigenous University, I conducted my own artistic research. Where I had, here. Forest Mind, a video work and book on the intelligence and metaphysics of plants. Do forests have a cognitive dimension? Are they intelligent? Do they have consciousness? When asking such questions, you can easily make out the difference between epistemic cultures, between knowledge systems. Forest mind is informed by many conversations with the Inga elders, the shamans, their daughters, women healers, and social leaders. By research in the field, mostly focused on the practice of traditional medics who work with the master plant, ayahuasca, in Colombia called yaje, or simply the medicine. Indigenous people in the Amazon have accumulated a vast knowledge about the many plants that grow in their territories, including those that possess potential medicinal properties used for physical and psycho-emotional healing. A particular pairing of two plants, a liana vine and a flower of a shrub, produce a psychoactive medicine that has been used by the Amazonian medics since time immemorial. The plant communicates through chemistry, and parts of that chemistry are neural transmitters. Through a peculiar coevolution, the transmitters happen to fit into the receptors in the human brain, creating a unique mode of telepathic communication between the plant and the person who ingests it. It is the result of a millennial co-evolution hitting the part of the brain that activates the sensibilities of perceiving, sensing, and imaging. Indigenous science is based on visions and the trained skills of interpreting visionary and intuitive forms of communication. The indigenous populations consider it a master plant, a plant teacher. Western scientists who do ayahuasca-related research mostly investigate how the medicine affects the human brain. Personally, I was far more interested in the plant's agency and intentions, how its intelligence communicates with the forest people, and how the plant works its way into their community. The agent involves social boundaries, dissolves social boundaries, and generates a sense of mutual responsibility that is bringing the Amazonian people together. The plant is mediating a collective experience. The mutual responsibility also applies to the living territory. It binds people to the land. On an individual level, it is mediating a fully embodied thinking, feeling, knowing, imaging. It is a psycho-integrator plant. Yahe is a brew taken during nocturnal ceremonies out in the forest under the guidance of one or several shamans. The expertise of how to navigate knowledge through ayahuasca is what constitutes indigenous science here. When ingested, the psychoactive agent excites the brain, prompting intense fluorescent visions which persist regardless of whether your eyes are open or closed. These fluorescent images are generated in the brain and projected out into the forest night using the darkness as a canvas. As a visual artist, I was captivated by the forest visually communicating with me by illuminating my neurons. The mind, according to the British anthropologist Gregory Bateson, is not located within a person's brain. Mind is what happens in the perceptual moment outside and between bodies. Cognition is relational. It goes beyond bodies. Humans and, as it turns out, many other beings are constantly broadcasting emotions, thoughts, and psychic fields as an expression and extension of their selves. Science has put a substantial focus on what can be perceived with our senses and measured with instruments, but ecological concepts should also consider the invisible, energetic, psychic, and mental dimensions of the interaction between beings and territories. They are out there in the landscape, physical and performative. All kinds of organisms are known to have a sort of unconscious level of informational processing, and this ability in plants turns out to be much more extensive than assumed. From natural science, we have learned a lot about the ability of plants to sense, communicate, and take decisions. Many of these recent cognitive findings imply that intelligence and consciousness in nature are indeed real biological phenomena that can be studied in science. There is a growing respect for plants. But from the biocentric perspective on the indigenous people, this intelligence goes much further. A vital force permeates all that exists, both visible and invisible entities, endowing them with awareness and meaning. All life is interconnected, and this is visually and energetically apparent. With the discovery of DNA in the 1950s, this principle has also been confirmed by Western science. We humans are made of the same fabric as the vegetal world. DNA technology is the Western approach to understanding that all life is interconnected. The DNA molecule emits ultra-weak light waves called biophotons. Thanks to new instruments, these minute light sources have now become measurable. During the communion with the master plant, these light waves become visible. The fact that they emit light suggests that they're quantic. They're quantum being. I mean, DNA molecules are quantum. It's a matter wave entanglement, and the wave is what carries all the information, not the particle. So my primary focus in Forest Mind is on the practice of traditional medics and how they engage the forest mind. But as a media artist, I also got interested in the images that biotechnology produces when sequencing the DNA of the rainforest. For this, I began a collaboration with ETH Zurich, who had made a breakthrough in new ways of using DNA knowledge as information technology. I became interested in the possibility of encoding materials that I brought back from the rainforest into a language of DNA. During a visit to the ETH lab, I arrived with three things: a sound file, a digital photograph, and a seed, a living seed from the large tree in the Putumayo region. Together, we encoded all three, sound, image, and life, into a single DNA sequence. It was a way of combining living matter with digital representation of the forest. The sequencing process carried out by the robotic computer generates what are called operational images, visual traces of the DNA being written. I use these images in the video work, allowing the viewer to witness the translation between code, life, and memory. There has long been a desire to preserve and retrieve the intelligence of the rainforest. To access this vegetal intelligence, both indigenous medics and molecular biologists have developed their own methodologies. Biologists relying on studying, sequencing, and computing, indigenous medics access this knowledge through visions, often guided by plant teachers. No? Oh, I kicked it out. Well, yeah. And that's actually a video too. My decision to bring an indigenous perspective into how we think about science and its understanding of the relationship between humans and the living world comes from a deep sense of urgency to embrace a greater diversity of ways of knowing. This isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's a call for epistemic justice. Western science may be able to sequence the genetic code of trees and plants in the rainforest, but can that knowledge alone bring a forest back once it has been destroyed? A different kind of sensibility will be required to assure an ecological continuation. Thank you.